1762. In his manor at Sweden, a few versts from St. Petersburg, an old man sets a drawing on the table in front of his son, a coat of arms. At its center, an elephant. Above it, a word no one at the Russian court can read, F-V-M-M-O. This man carries a Russian name, Abram Petrovich Gannibal. He holds the rank of general-in-chief in the Tsar's army. But the face he shows his son belongs to no Russian nobleman. 60 years earlier, a child was torn from Africa. He would never see his homeland again. He would never speak his mother tongue again. And yet, he would end his life decorated by an empress in a country that, when he arrived, didn't even know where to place Africa on a map. This is the story of Abram Petrovich Gannibal, the snow elephant. Around 1696, a boy is born in a principality of Central Africa. Historians disagree on the exact location. Some place it near Lake Chad, in the Lagone region on the border of present-day Cameroon. Others place it further east, on the highlands near present-day Eritrea. Most of what we believe we know about his childhood comes from a single text, an unfinished novel written nearly a century later by his own great-grandson, who had every reason to embellish his family's lineage. The title of prince, often attached to him, belongs to this same zone of uncertainty. What follows, however, is documented. As a child, he is captured and taken into the Ottoman Empire. Around 1703, he turns up in Constantinople, one of many African children who pass through the markets of the Ottoman capital. There, a Russian diplomat, Sava Vladislavich Raguzinsky, notices him. Tsar Peter I has given precise instructions. Find bright young African minds to bring back to Russia, for education and for the court. The boy is purchased and taken on the long journey to Moscow. He doesn't know it yet, but he has just entered the boldest experiment of Peter the Great's reign. At the Russian court, the arrival of an African child draws curiosity, and from some boyars, contempt. Peter I sees something else in it, a demonstration. The Tsar is pursuing a brutal modernization policy, forcing the Russian nobility to send their sons to study science in the West against stubborn resistance. An African child, raised by the best European methods and turned into a brilliant mind, would be living proof that education, not birth, makes the man. The boy is baptized under the name Abram Petrovich. Peter I becomes his godfather. He grows up in the Tsar's immediate circle, learning mathematics and several languages, and quickly develops a talent for geometry and calculation that doesn't go unnoticed. In 1716, the Tsar sends him to France to master what Moscow still cannot teach him, the art of modern warfare. At Metz, then at the Royal Artillery Academy of La Fère, Abram studies military engineering, ballistics, fortification. He excels. In Parisian salons, he's nicknamed the Dark Star of the Enlightenment, an African mind at the very heart of learned Europe at a time when this is almost unthinkable. But the French army isn't confined to salons. In 1719, during the War of the Quadruple Alliance, Abram takes part in the siege of Fuenterrabía in northern Spain. His task is among the most dangerous in military engineering, digging siege trenches ever closer to the enemy's walls under continuous Spanish artillery fire. Around him, earth erupts, men fall. He stays, calculates his angles, guides his sappers meter by meter toward the fortress walls. A shell fragment strikes him in the head. He collapses, covered in blood, in the middle of the trench he had just pushed forward. He survives. He returns to Russia no longer as a child raised out of charity, but as a decorated officer, a military engineer trained at one of Europe's finest schools, marked for life by the first proof that his own knowledge could kill him as easily as save him. In 1725, Peter the Great dies. Abram loses, in one stroke, his protector, his godfather, the man who had made him a personal experiment rather than just another subject. Without Peter, his place at court holds only as much weight as those who always saw him as an outsider allow it to. Prince Alexander Menshikov, the favorite-turned regent, wastes no time. Abram is pushed out of court and sent to the empire's far edge, to Selenginsk, near the Mongolian frontier, an exile disguised as a military posting. Selenginsk is nothing like an honor. Winters there fall well below -30 degrees. There is no court, no Parisian salons, no engineers to discuss geometry with. Only an isolated garrison and months of darkness. Abram arrives without a protector, without news from the capital, with only the certainty that the man now ruling Russia wants him to disappear into this distance. And yet, he works. He draws up fortification plans for the Mongolian frontier, writes technical reports, secretly continues a treatise on geometry that no court is waiting for. He isn't working for a czar anymore, or for a career. It's the one thing that can't be taken from him. These are the very years that prove what the court refused to acknowledge. His worth never depended on a czar's favor. It depended on his own work. Back from exile, Abram's private life is marked by the same rejection he faced at court. In 1731, he marries Evdokia Dioper, the daughter of a Greek captain. The marriage is forced on her by her family. She doesn't want it, and says so openly. It quickly turns into a disaster. Accused of infidelity after the birth of a daughter, Evdokia is arrested and imprisoned on Abram's orders, an episode historians confirm, though not every detail can be established with certainty. The divorce is never officially granted, and yet Abram goes on to marry Christina Regina Sjöberg, of German-Swedish descent, in a union technically bigamous under church law. It's with her that he builds a lasting family. Several of their children will carry the Gannibal name into Russian nobility and beyond. In 1741, a coup brings Elizabeth Petrovna, daughter of Peter the Great, to power. She remembers the child her father raised as his own son. Abram, aged but still serving in the army, is recalled to court before the very same boyars who, 40 years earlier, sneered at his appearance. The Empress names him to the highest rank a military engineer can reach in the Russian army, General-in-Chief. She awards him the Order of St. Alexander Nevsky, one of the empire's highest honors. The man Menshikov, once exiled as an outsider, returns crowned as one of the pillars of the very state that had once rejected him. Retired to his estate at Sweden, Abram commissions the coat of arms that opened this story, an elephant, above the letters F, Phi, M, M, O. Some read it as Latin decoded, Fortuna vitam meam mutavit omnino. Fortune has entirely changed my life. Others believe the elephant honors an ancient general whose name so closely echoes his own, Hannibal Barca. The symbol's exact meaning remains debated, but its owner knew precisely what it represented, a trajectory nothing at his birth could have foretold. Abram Petrovich Gannibal dies in 1781, surrounded by his family at roughly 85 years old. 18 years later, his great-grandson is born, Alexander Pushkin, the very man who would later write the unfinished novel on which much of what we believe we know about Abram's life still rests. The father of modern Russian literature carried in his blood and in his memory the story of an African child torn from his homeland. He would speak of it himself in his verse as an inheritance he claimed rather than concealed. A child captured on the banks of an African river became a general of an empire that spanned 11 time zones. And it is through him, in the end, that Africa found itself woven, never quite forgotten by Russia, into the very origins of its greatest literary voice.